Hey there. Thank you so much for making Obi-Wan a part of your weekend. So glad that you joined us online. My name is Chris. I'm one of the pastors, and it's my privilege to share with you today. Do you remember what it was like, the feelings that you were having, whether it was excitement or whether it just felt so long? That final semester, the final months, the final weeks, the final days before you were supposed to go on summer break. Did you ever feel like, man, this is just taking forever. I just want to get to the summer. I'm excited about summer. Why is these last couple weeks feeling like a year? If you've ever been there, I think you'll appreciate this meme that's going to be up on the screen. It says each month has 28 to 31 days, except for the last month of school, which has over 1,600 days. Why, if you felt that way, why did you feel that way? Because you love summer. You wanted to get to summer. I think lots of people love summer for many different reasons, whether it's going on vacation or for kids or teenagers, it's a little bit more freedom from the school routine. The weather's usually good in most places. Think of some of the famous songs that are out there about summer. Summer of '69. Or how about this one? Summer Nights from the one and only Grease. I will spare you singing that song. You can thank me now. Summertime by Fresh Prince, who is more famously known as Will Smith, or even Kid Rock's All Summer Long. Hopefully I got your generation in there somewhere. But like I said, summer is also a time where most typically take vacations. I have very special summer memories going on road trips with my family. You may ask, why did I go on road trips? We couldn't often fly due to this thing called my parents had 4 kids. Even cheap tickets can get expensive and start to add up when you have to buy 6 of them. Hanging out with extended family, hanging out with cousins, going to theme parks, and so on. So many special memories have come through summer vacations. Vacations can be cool for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because it can give people a light at the end of the tunnel with the grind that they're going through in everyday life. Okay, just a few more weeks, and I can get away from everything for a little bit, for just a little season. I can rest, I can relax. Then, once they're on vacation, it gives them hopefully rest. Rest on your vacation. You'll thank me for it. It gives them rest and hopefully even perspective about the grind that they face. Face it, life is hard. Life often has struggles, even daily struggles. Even when life is good, it can still be a monotonous grind at times. Wash, rinse, and repeat. And don't you agree? Doesn't 2020 seem like one big wash, rinse, and repeat? Lights at the end of the tunnel, when effective, can change our perspective. And perspective, we're in this new series called Overcomer. Perspective is a piece of the puzzle that helps us overcome our difficulties and struggles instead of our difficulties and struggles overcoming us. Even when our lives are good, like I said earlier, perspective can help us overcome the mundane and often monotonous grind we all fall into. One of the things I love about the Bible is that it's helpful for our everyday lives. Just this year, we've done a financial series where we looked at biblical principles that can help us in our everyday finances. We did a family series where we looked at biblical principles that could help us have a stronger family. We just completed a series where we looked at how we can discover and live out our purpose. The Bible is full of things that help us navigate through our everyday lives. That said, there are times where the Bible reveals to us, and this is so cool, that there's something greater than this life to look forward to. Like I've referenced already, life is tough. It's a grind, and it's even so mundane at times. But if you're a Christ follower, this awesome light at the end of the tunnel that God gives us, if we allow it, it can change our perspective. It can help us overcome instead of be overcome by life. Now, I'm going to share a verse so we can discover what that light at the end of the tunnel is. But here's a little context. The writer, whose name is John, had a vision from Jesus about a future time. Just a couple verses before the one I'm going to share, John reveals that in his vision, he has seen a new heaven and new earth. So we're going to pick it up from there in Revelation 21. It says this, listen in. I heard a loud voice from the throne. It said, look, God now makes his home with the people. He will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. Did you catch it? Our ultimate light at the end of the tunnel is living with God forever. You know, it's interesting. Some have this interesting view of living with God. Some think it will be boring. There's nothing to do. We're just going to hang out on the clouds with God in the sky, just sitting there staring at each other forever. Like the God of the universe that created this whole thing has nothing better to do than sit on the clouds with us. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be fun, and it's going to be the greatest experience one could ever imagine. You're going to see a couple photos pop up on the screen here, and think about this. For some of you, when you're at the ocean, you might feel like you have this sense of, or you might say it out loud, man, this just feels like heaven right now. Man, the peace that I feel when I'm near an ocean, it's just heavenly. Some of you might feel that way when you're at the mountains. Whether you're looking up at the mountains, or you're on a peak, or somewhere in the middle, and you're looking out and you're like, man, this just feels like heaven. Or let's go to the next slide. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go. Here's the next slide. Some of you, when you are eating that chocolate cake, you're like, oh my gosh. If you don't like chocolate, you're not thinking that, of course. But if you love chocolate, when you're eating that cake, you might think to yourself or say, man, this tastes heavenly. And let's go to our final picture. When some of us, when we're with family, we love our families so much. We're having fun with them. Maybe it's our day off, or it's the end of the day. We're just having fun with our families, and we're like, man, it can't get better than this. I'm in heaven. That tastes heavenly. A piece of heaven. What's happening? We use those words to describe things we like. The things that bring us peace. Things that feel like this is as good as it gets. If I die now with that piece of chocolate cake in my mouth, fine by me. Living with God is going to be awesome. Heaven, living with God in eternity, is the thing that's ultimately going to be awesome for him and his followers. Listen to the next verse in this vision. It goes on to say in Revelation 21, he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Wow, that's cool. There will be no more death, and there will be no more sadness. Man, can you picture this? There will be no more crying or pain. Things are no longer the way they used to be. Can you do me a favor? You're watching through the screen right now. I want you to stop watching through the screen, and just for a moment, I want you to close your eyes. Nothing weird going on here. It's just that sometimes when you close your eyes, it can help you focus, okay? So you got your eyes closed? Good. You're nodding at me? Good. Now I know that your eyes are closed. Picture this. Could you imagine a place of no sadness and regret. You're not going to have to face another day waking up being discouraged by life. A place where you never have to experience death of a family member or friends or even your own mortality. It's a place with no pain. Are you picturing it right now? That physical, emotional, or mental pain that you have now gone. You're not going to have to wake up to find that there's been another school shooting, another war, another murder, another tragedy, another injustice, or another pandemic. Heck, you are not going to have to face another 2020 again. Yes, sign me up right now. Thank you, God. You're not going to toss and turn at night worrying. You'll be in a place of constant peace. Are you really picturing this right now? You're not going to have to struggle through the self-worth and burdens that you carry now. You won't be embarrassed about your flaws and mistakes. You're not going to be tempted to do anything wrong. In fact, you won't do anything wrong. Most importantly, you'll be in a place where you're completely accepted, and you won't have to wonder if God cares about or loves you anymore. You'll know because you'll be hanging out with Jesus face to face. Listen in to this verse in the Psalms. It says this: "The Lord is good. His faithful love continues forever." It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. So it's not like we're going to live with God for a while in the forever, and then he's like, you know what, my love has run out on you. It's just not going to happen. His faithful love continues forever. It will last for all time to come. Man, that's so cool. I hope that there have been times where you've tangibly experienced God's love for you. It's real, and it's something that's available to us, to you and I, right now, all the time. That said, the confidence that you have in his love will never fade once you're living with him. It won't be something you have to question again. When you see Jesus, you'll know. You won't have to wonder anymore. You know, I love many aspects of life. It's awesome that God has given us life. That said, to be in a place where I won't have to struggle, overcome, worry, or be tempted to do wrong, to be in a place where I actually won't mess up and do the wrong thing, feel shame and regret, be concerned about what others think, or be in danger or harm, to be in a place where I feel completely accepted, perfectly in relationship with God and others, completely at peace, face to face with Jesus. Life is good, but man, what an awesome place to come. You may be thinking, PK, this does sound awesome, but what do I do with this now? A great question. I'm glad that you asked. If we allow it to, this promise of living with God forever can change our perspective about our current situations. So with our remaining time, I want to talk with you about a couple of things that we can do, you and I can do, to either gain or keep this eternal perspective so that we can be overcomers instead of being overcome by life. Let's go back to the Bible to look at something here. It says this in Colossians 3. It says, "You have been raised up with Christ. So think about things that are in heaven." That is where Christ is. He is sitting at God's right hand. Think about things that are in heaven. Don't think about things that are only on earth. Number one, if you're taking notes, if you're going to be an overcomer instead of one that's overcome by life, number one, look for the light. Man, it is so important that we look for the light. It doesn't mean, hear me, it doesn't mean we ignore our problems or feelings and pretend that they're not there. It doesn't mean that we ignore our struggles and just try to pretend. That's not what it's talking about. Notice what the verse says. It says, don't only think about things on earth. don't only think about things on earth. We need to think about things in heaven too, so that we can get unstuck and gain perspective. We need to think about those things in heaven, again, so that we can just stay unstuck and gain an eternal perspective. For Jesus followers, there's something that we can look forward to that puts this life in perspective. This life isn't everything. Jesus has something so much better for us, and it's waiting for us on the other side of this life. Kind of like thinking about that vacation or the weekend or that day off or that date night with your spouse or someone in your family, or even you're just going to hang out with your friends. Kind of like those things can take your mind off of some of your burdens and things that you're facing. Heaven can take our minds off of our current problems and remind us that there's something greater coming. It reminds us that anything, and I mean anything that happens in this life, doesn't have final say for people who have Jesus. We can look forward to receiving something more. Now again, hear me. I'm not downplaying the difficulty of now. You may be experiencing or going through some really hard things right now. God cares about those things. He doesn't downplay those things. So don't hear that. But what happens here is temporary and will pass. What we are receiving is permanent and will last. Listen into our next couple verses here in 2 Corinthians. It says, our troubles are small. They last only for a short time, but they are earning for us a glory that will last forever. It is greater than all our troubles. So let's listen to the next part, talking about looking, right? We're talking about looking for the light. Look what it says next. So we don't spend all of our time looking at what we can see. Instead, we look at what we can't see. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Why don't we just focus on our problems and struggles? Why do we look for and have hope for something greater? Here's why. That's because what can be seen lasts only a short time, but what can't be seen will last forever. When you're struggling with things in this life, if you're starting to be overcome by life, look for the light. As I shared, perspective is a piece of the puzzle when it comes to overcoming. Even if it's hard now, you won't always have to face your struggles. You won't always have to deal with your troubles. Paul, who's the writer of 2 Corinthians, the verses that we just read, isn't being tone deaf or insensitive to our struggles when he wrote those verses. He's just trying to say that in light of living with God forever, our troubles are small and really do only last for a short time. Life isn't the end. Forever is the end. And if you have Jesus, there's nothing better. I promise you, absolutely nothing better. This is why there's hope and why we overcome now. You want to overcome instead of be overcome by life? Look for the light and let it change your perspective of your current situation. Let's go back to the Bible to see what else we can do to either gain or keep this eternal perspective so that we can be overcomers instead of being overcome by this life. In Matthew 6, and Jesus is talking here, he says this, "Don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal." Then he says this, and it's really interesting. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. If you're going to be someone that's an overcomer instead of being overcome by life. Number 2, live for it now. Live for it now. According to Auto Trader, the average length of time a person keeps a car is a little over 71 months. Don't misunderstand. There's nothing wrong with having a car. If you need a car, go buy one that you can afford. But think about it this way. We invest a lot each month. Nod your head in the screen. Some invest a lot each month in their car, some more than others, just for something that you'll have for 71 months. According to CNBC, get this, there are more storage facilities in the U.S., this is crazy, than there are Starbucks, McDonald's, Walmart's, Home Depots, Domino's Pizzas, Dunkin' Donuts, and Costco's combined. Combined. There's more storage facilities than all those places combined. Crazy how much stuff we have in the U.S. of A. How about this one? In 2017, if my math is correct, every 23 seconds there was a burglary. That sounds familiar to Jesus' verse. Hey, don't store these things up here so that thieves don't break in and destroy it. Property losses due to burglaries in 2017 totaled $3.4 billion. Not 3.4 thousand, not 3.4 million, 3.4 billion. Now again, don't misunderstand. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life and having some things. But Jesus was on to something. We can get too caught up living for now instead of living for it now, the it being eternity. Jesus was trying to say that your life, yes, your life, my life, your life is worth more than spending it on things that get trashed after 6 months, that are gone after 71 months, or have the potential to be destroyed or stolen. He encourages us to live for it now. Here's why. Because anything you do for God lasts. Jesus was encouraging us to expend our lives on things that mattered and that will last. That's how much your life is worth. We're the ones that usually deduce our lives to, my life is only worth things on this earth, because we keep running around ragged trying to gain them. We accidentally cheapen our lives when our focus is only on the here and now. Notice again that I use the word only, because of course you have to focus on the now as well. Let me give you an example that may help. My wife and I, Robin and I, we have a vision to retire well. Because we're living for something later that's important, we sacrifice in the now for later. It doesn't mean we go too far with this and say, hey kids, here's your cardboard box, go live in it so that we can live in a mansion when you're gone. Sorry kids, that's not what we're talking about here. That said, we do sacrifice because we're also living for it now, the it in this case being retirement. Jesus asks us to make sacrifice with our lives now, investing our lives now in eternal things, because that's what will last forever. He asks us to make sacrifices with our time, our resources, our treasures, and to expend our talents on things that matter, because it's the God things that are going to last. He's trying to give us a vision that's beyond this life. But Jesus gives us a choice. He pretty much says you can keep living and expending your life on things that don't last or that don't matter in the end. The choice is yours. Or you can follow my advice and I'll show you what real life is. I'll show you to live for things that last and things that matter. Instead of living for now only, live for it now. God is going to be with you. in this life, and he's going to help you through good times and bad if you let him. God wants to bless you, and he wants to help you live life well. He'll help you fight your battles, and I hope there are times where you experience victory. But at some point, this thing called following Jesus is also about what's important to him and what's important beyond this life. It's about living for it now, loving him, your family, and others well, using your life to further Jesus' mission, which is to spread his love and hope to others, using and sacrificing some resources to further his mission, using your time to things that matter to him, expending your energy and talents on things that elevate Jesus to others. Jesus also says, again, going back to the verse that we looked at, in fact, let's look at that verse again in Matthew 6, the ending. It says this right at the end. It's so interesting that he says this in the verse. So we're going to look at it right here. It says this: wherever your treasure is, there your heart will also be. I mentioned earlier that my wife and I are trying to retire well. So one of the things we do is set aside some money each month and put it into stocks. Guess what happened as soon as we started doing that? Take a guess. My heart was in the stock market. It's something that I started paying attention to. Why? Because my money is in there. Whatever team my kids have ended up on, they've become teams I've rooted for, even if I didn't know any other kid on the team. Guess why Monterey Bay, California has had my interest before? My daughter wants to go to college there. My kids are some of my top treasures. It's clear where your treasure is, your desires and heart will also be there. When we start living for it now, our hearts more naturally navigate towards the eternal. When we live for it now, it can help us overcome instead of being overcome by life. While this life is important, it really is. It's so short in light of eternity. And if we're followers of Jesus, our greatest and longest reality is heaven. Our greatest and longest reality is living with God forever. This is why Jesus was so adamant about living for and preparing for it now by giving our lives to things that will last beyond this life. Living for eternity is powerful. Serve your family with everything you've got. Serve others even when it's inconvenient. Love on people well, even when they don't deserve it. Give of yourself by serving in some area at OB1. Give of your resources. Forgive when it's hard or when it seems impossible. And believe me, I know that one well. Give the hope of Jesus to someone that doesn't know him yet. Essentially, spend your life on things that matter and that will make a difference. In his book, Chase the Lion, Mark Batterson has a story about a person named Taylor, and I want to read that story to you. It's really, really cool about someone that's living for it now. It says this: as Taylor crossed the George Washington Bridge, he felt prompted to pray for the New York City neighborhood God had called him to. That's so awesome. Looking beyond himself, looking at others, knowing that Jesus' love is for him and others. As Taylor circled Harlem in his car, the Lord kept telling him just a little farther. 90 minutes later, Taylor prayed one final prayer as he headed home. Even now, Lord, give me an opportunity to reach someone. After parking his car, Taylor hadn't taken 5 steps when he made eye contact with Michael. Taylor asked him a rather bold question: do you like your life? Looking down at the ground, Michael said, no, I hate my life. I messed it all up. When Taylor asked Michael if he knew Jesus, Michael proudly revealed the chain around his neck. Yeah, I keep him around my neck. Taylor gently explained that wearing Jesus around your neck isn't enough, that you have to invite him into your heart. Then Taylor asked Michael if he'd ever been to church. A few years ago, I was in downtown Manhattan, Michael said, when an old white dude stopped me and invited me to church. Later that day, I went there, and it turns out he was the pastor. Have you heard of Times Square Church? Taylor laughed to himself, but kept a poker face. He asked Michael if he remembered the pastor's name. Michael said, I got to think about it. It was Wilkerson. Yeah, David Wilkerson. Then Taylor tipped his hand. Do you want to know my name? My name is Taylor David Wilkerson. Michael, the last person to tell you about Jesus was my great uncle, David Wilkerson. And now Jesus sent me to remind you that it's not too late to start over. Wow. Someone living for it now. And I'm not saying that has to be your story, but just an everyday person named Taylor realizing how important it was to live for it now. And look what God did for him in that moment. And for someone else named Michael that needed him in that moment. And like I said, Taylor's story doesn't have to be yours. There's a million different stories of examples that what living for it now means. And in the end, it's about making your own story with God and living for it now. But as we start to live for it now, it helps us focus on eternal things, which can help us not be as focused on things that often burden us. Because again, where your treasure is there's your heart will also be. You want to overcome instead of be overcome. Live for it now. Listen to the final verse that we're gonna read together today from Revelation 21. It's so cool, and I hope you hold on to it. You might want to put it on your phone, on your refrigerator, or at the very least, say it to yourself many times so that it's in your soul and in your spirit. It says this, He who is sitting on the throne said, I am making everything new. How cool to live somewhere where everything's new. Then he said, write this down. You can trust these words. They are true. You can trust God. He knew that we would wonder from time to time. He knew we would wander often. He knew that we would get distracted way too often. He knew that we would get discouraged from time to time. He knew that we would need to refocus every once in a while. He knew that there would be times where we would be tempted to be overcome by this life, but he encourages us to be overcomers and people that overcome. That's why he encouraged John, the one that was getting this vision from Jesus, to write it down so that we could be assured that what's coming is true. And can I say, maybe you're watching right now, and you've never given your life to Jesus before, but you are fascinated by this thing called living with God forever, for heaven. And can I tell you, you can have that promise too. You really can. And it's not hard. It's very simple. It's just receiving something and receiving someone. It's receiving and asking Jesus to be your leader. Telling Jesus, would you be my leader? I can't lead myself. I've messed it up way too many times. And I've seen way too many other people mess up as well. So I don't even trust that they can lead me. But Jesus, I'm asking you today to lead me. It's also asking and receiving this about Jesus. Jesus, would you be my forgiver? As I just admitted, I haven't led my life well. I've done a lot of wrong. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've blown up my life way too many times. But can you give me a second chance? Would you forgive me of all of my sin? Thank you for going to the cross. Jesus, would you be my forgiver and leader? And if you do that today, I'd encourage you to say that prayer either right now or before your head hits the pillow or when I pray with you in a little bit. But you can receive that promise as well. For everyone, how would your life be different if you continued to look for the light? Would your perspective change, help you overcome? What would change in you if you started living for it now instead of only living for now? Maybe, just maybe, this is so cool, maybe, just maybe, this awesome place that God is preparing for us would become a more consistent and stronger reality in our lives now. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much for giving this vision to a man named John, to where we could be told and then reminded repeatedly that there's something greater than this life to actually live for. And I just pray for everyone watching right now that you would you show them what that means for them, what it means to live for it now. Give them the courage, the strength. If they're down and out right now, Lord, would you send your love to them? Because it is available to them now. If they're discouraged now, would you send that to them, God? Help them to receive it. But God, help each of us to live for it now so that we can overcome and so that we can help others overcome. And Jesus, as I referenced a little earlier, hey, if there's anyone watching right now, you might want to add something like this to your prayer. Jesus, I want to be in this place that you're describing. And so today, I ask you to lead my life, be my leader, and I ask you to forgive my life. Forgive me of the things I've done. Thank you for going to the cross. So not only be my leader, Jesus, be my forgiver. I'm sorry for the things I've done. Thank you that you do forgive me. I accept your grace. I accept you into my life. And I thank you for leading me well. And Jesus, for everyone watching, wherever they're at, help them to be able to overcome life, to not be overcome by it, but to overcome life by living for it now. Give them a vision. Jesus, just like you gave John a vision of what's coming, give them a vision of their life, of what it means to live for it, to live for you now. We love you, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're preparing. And we pray these things in your name.